Hey there, and welcome to Crazy Pepper, the channel where drama sizzles and revenge burns hotter than ever. If you love jaw dropping twists, bold characters, and stories that keep you guessing till the end, you're in the right place. Subscribe and dive into gripping tales of betrayal, karma, and ultimate payback. Get ready for unforgettable moments and satisfying endings, only on Crazy Pepper. Hit that bell and let the drama begin. My wife Emily had more secrets than my bank's online security portal. Too bad I was the only one in our marriage without the password. I'm Will Granger, 41 years old, IT security specialist for a mid-sized Dallas firm, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect suburban life. Nice house in Plano, beautiful wife, 7-year-old son Max who could explain quantum physics better than most adults. Emily worked as what she called a corporate wellness consultant, which I always figured was fancy talk for teaching rich people how to meditate and eat kale. Turns out I was wrong about everything. It started on a Tuesday morning in October. Emily sat across from me at our granite breakfast counter, scrolling through her phone with that distant look she'd been wearing for months. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect ponytail, designer workout clothes hugging her yoga-toned frame. She looked like every other affluent suburban mom, except for the cold calculation in her green eyes. "Will, I need you to pick up Max from school today," she said without looking up. "I have a client meeting that might run late." "Another one? That's the third this week." I poured coffee into my Dallas Cowboys mug, the one Max had given me for Father's Day. "What kind of wellness consulting requires so many evening sessions?" Emily's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The kind that pays for this house and your son's private school." Max bounced into the kitchen, wearing his dinosaur backpack, tablet clutched in his small hands. At 7, he was all knees and elbows, with Emily's green eyes and my stubborn cowlick that refused to stay down no matter how much gel we used. "Dad, can you help me with my science project tonight? I want to build a volcano that actually works, not one of those boring baking soda ones." "Sure, buddy. We'll make it spectacular." I ruffled his hair, earning a giggle. "Just don't tell your mom if we accidentally blow up the garage." Emily finally looked up from her phone. "Max, grab your lunch from the fridge and make sure you have the right tablet. You took mine yesterday by mistake." That's when I noticed the sleek black iPad in Max's hands instead of his blue kid-friendly one. Emily's device, the one she guarded like nuclear launch codes. "Oops." Max set it on the counter and grabbed his own tablet from the charging station. "Sorry, Mom. They look almost the same in the dark." For just a second, panic flashed across Emily's face. Real, genuine terror. Then her mask slipped back into place. "No damage done, sweetie. Just be more careful." But I'd seen that look. In my line of work, you learn to recognize when someone's hiding something big. The kind of big that makes people sweat through their designer workout clothes at 7 in the morning. After Emily left for her mysterious client meeting and I dropped Max at school, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. Emily had been distant for months, taking calls in other rooms, staying out late, claiming her wellness business was expanding rapidly. I'd attributed it to a midlife career change, maybe some Marshall problems we needed to work through. Now I wondered if I'd been living with a stranger. My phone buzzed with a text from Tony Martinez, my old college roommate, who'd become a private investigator after leaving the Dallas PD. "Beer tonight and got some interesting gossip about your neighborhood." I stared at the message, remembering Emily's panicked expression when Max had grabbed her tablet. Maybe it was time to start asking some harder questions about my wife's secret life. "Sure," I texted back. "I might have some questions for you too." At work, I couldn't concentrate, and every security protocol I reviewed reminded me of Emily's secretive behavior. The locked phone, the password-protected laptop, the way she'd started parking 2 blocks away when she came home late, claiming she needed the walk to decompress. Around 3 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed Max's school. "Mr. Granger, this is Principal Watson. We need you to come to the school immediately. There's been an incident involving your son, and the police are here." My blood turned to ice. "Is Max hurt? What happened?" "Max is fine, but there's a situation we need to discuss in person. Please come right away." I grabbed my keys and raced across town, my mind spinning through every possible scenario. Car accident? Playground fight? Some kind of threat? The last thing I expected to see was 2 Dallas police officers standing in the principal's office while Max sat in a chair looking confused and scared. "Granger?" The taller officer, a woman with graying hair and tired eyes, stepped forward. "I'm Detective Sarah Riley. We need to talk about some disturbing content found on a tablet your son brought to school today." My stomach dropped like a broken elevator. "What kind of content?" Detective Riley exchanged glances with her partner, a younger Hispanic officer whose nameplate read Santos. She pulled out an evidence bag containing Emily's black iPad. "Your son's teacher found videos on this device that are extremely concerning. We need to determine if you were aware of this material." Principal Watson, a kind woman in her 50s who'd always been supportive of Max's advanced academic needs, looked like she'd aged 10 years since morning. "Will, I'm so sorry. Max was trying to show his classmates a science video when he accidentally opened something else. I had to call immediately." Detective Riley connected the tablet to a laptop and turned the screen toward me. "I need to warn you, this is disturbing content." Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. The video showed Emily in Max's bedroom, wearing a black hooded robe, performing what looked like some kind of ritual around a small animal. The timestamp showed it was recorded 3 weeks ago at 2 a.m. while Max and I were asleep down the hall. There were multiple videos, all featuring Emily engaged in increasingly bizarre and disturbing activities. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest by a freight train. "Jesus Christ," I whispered, then caught myself in front of Max. I had no idea. I swear to God, I had no idea she was doing this. My mind reeled. The woman I'd been married to for 9 years, the mother of my child, had been conducting what looked like occult rituals in our home while we slept. The timestamps showed dozens of videos over the past 6 months, always in the early morning hours when I was dead asleep after long workdays. Detective Riley studied my reaction carefully. "Mr. Granger, we're going to need you to come to the station for questioning. Child Protective Services will also need to interview your son." "Am I under arrest?" My voice sounded hollow, distant. "Not at this time. But we need to establish what you knew and when you knew it." The next 4 hours were a blur of interrogation rooms, legal procedures, and the slow destruction of everything I thought I knew about my life. Detective Riley was thorough but fair, eventually concluding that I'd been completely unaware of Emily's activities. The timestamps corroborated my story. I was either at work or asleep during every incident. Emily was picked up at her client meeting and taken for psychiatric evaluation. Not jail, thankfully, but a 72-hour hold while they determined her mental state and the extent of her activities. By evening, I was driving home with Max, both of us shell-shocked and trying to process what had happened. My phone had been buzzing constantly with calls from neighbors, friends, and family members who'd somehow already heard about the police involvement. "Dad?" Max's small voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. "Is Mom sick?" How do you explain to a 7-year-old that his mother had been performing disturbing rituals in his bedroom? That the woman who kissed him goodnight and helped with homework had been living a secret life that would probably require years of therapy to understand? "Yeah, buddy. Mom is sick and she's getting help from doctors right now. Will she get better?" I wished I had an answer that wouldn't break his heart. "I don't know, Max. But I promise you're safe, and I'm going to make sure you stay safe." When we pulled into our driveway, I noticed Mrs. Carmichael, our elderly neighbor, peeking through her curtains. She'd probably been fielding questions from other neighbors all day. By tomorrow, the whole subdivision would know that the Grangers had become the family everyone whispered about. Inside our house, everything looked normal. Same furniture, same family photos on the mantel, same cheerful yellow kitchen where we'd eaten breakfast that morning. But now I saw it all differently. How many nights had Emily crept through these halls while Max and I slept, engaging in activities that would haunt my nightmares? I was microwaving leftover pizza for dinner when someone pounded on our front door. Not knocked, pounded, like they owned the place. Through the peephole, I saw a massive man with graying temples and the kind of build that screamed former athlete. Behind him stood a younger guy with tattoo sleeves and the dead-eyed stare of someone who'd spent time in lockup. I opened the door, but kept the chain latched. "Can I help you? You Will Granger?" The big man's voice carried the authority of someone used to getting his way. "I'm Carter Wells, Emily's business partner. This is Jake Morrison. We're here to collect some of Emily's things." Business partner, right. I'd heard Emily mention Carter's name a few times over the past months, always in the context of expanding the wellness practice. Now I wondered what kind of business they'd really been conducting. "Emily's not here," I said through the crack in the door, and I don't think now is a good time for visitors. Carter's face hardened. Look, pal, Emily's got some important files and equipment here that belong to our clients. We're not leaving without them. Then you're going to have a long wait in my driveway. Jake stepped forward, his hand moving toward his jacket. Maybe you didn't hear my friend clearly. We're coming in. That's when something inside me snapped. 3 months of suspicion, a day of devastating revelations, and now 2 thugs on my doorstep demanding access to my home where my traumatized son was eating pizza and trying to forget that his world had imploded. I slammed the door, turned the deadbolt, and called through the wood. You've got 10 seconds to get off my property before I call the police. And trust me, they're very interested in anything connected to Emily right now. Carter pounded the door again. This isn't over, Granger. You have no idea what you're messing with. I watched through the window as they retreated to a black pickup truck parked on at the curb. Carter was on his phone, gesturing angrily. Jake kept staring at the house like he was memorizing every detail. After they drove away, I called Tony Martinez. Will, how'd the school thing go? Tony, I need your help, and I need you to keep this conversation between us for now. What's going on? I gave him the abbreviated version, the videos, the police, Emily's psychiatric hold, and the 2 men who'd just tried to intimidate their way into my house. Tony whistled low. Jesus, man, I'm sorry. What do you need? I need to know everything about Emily's business activities, who she's been meeting with, where she's been going, what kind of wellness consulting requires keeping secrets from your husband. I can do that. But Will, if these people are willing to show up at your house with muscle, you might be dealing with something bigger than marital problems. That's what I'm afraid of. After I hung up, I found Max in his room, building with Legos and trying to pretend everything was normal. I sat on his bed, watching him construct an elaborate space station. Hey, buddy, we might go stay at Grandma's house for a few days. Would that be okay? Max looked up with those serious green eyes. Because of the men at the door? Smart kid, too smart for his own good sometimes. Because I want to make sure you feel safe while Mom gets better. He nodded and went back to his Legos. But I noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he tried to connect the small plastic pieces. That night, after Max fell asleep, I sat in my home office staring at Emily's abandoned iPad, now returned from police evidence. Detective Riley had given me access to review the contents, warning me that there was much more disturbing material than what they'd shown me at the school. She was right. Hours of videos, photos, and documents that painted a picture of a woman I'd never known. Emily hadn't just been conducting bizarre rituals. She'd been documenting everything, organizing files by date and location, maintaining detailed records like some kind of twisted business operation. And buried in a folder labeled Insurance, I found something that made my blood run cold. Photos and videos of other people, including Carter Wells and several individuals I didn't recognize, engaged in similar activities. Some of the faces looked familiar. Local business owners, a city council member, even a judge I'd seen on the news. Emily hadn't just been participating in whatever this was. She'd been collecting evidence, building leverage, creating insurance policies against people who could destroy her if they chose to. My wife had been running a blackmail operation. The next morning, I dropped Max at my mother's house in Richardson and met Tony at a coffee shop near his office. He'd been busy overnight, and the information he'd gathered painted an even darker picture of Emily's secret life. Your wife's been lying about a lot more than just her evening activities, Tony said, sliding a manila folder across the table. Carter Wells owns a gym in Deep Ellum, but that's just his front operation. The real money comes from private parties he hosts for wealthy clients who have unusual interests. I opened the folder and found surveillance photos of Emily entering and leaving various upscale locations around Dallas. Hotels, private residences, even a warehouse in an industrial district. How long has this been going on? Based on what I could track, at least 8 months, maybe longer. Tony sipped his coffee and studied my face. Will, these aren't just affairs or even standard Zex work. This is organized, structured, and connected to some very powerful people. Your wife was in deep with a crowd that doesn't like exposure. That explains Carter and his friend showing up yesterday. It gets worse. I ran Carter's background. He's got connections to organized crime through his cousin in New Orleans. Nothing directly prosecutable, but enough to make him dangerous when cornered. I thought about Jake Morrison's dead eyes and the way he'd reached for his jacket when I'd refused them entry. What kind of danger are we talking about? The kind where people disappear when they become inconvenient. We spent the next hour going through Tony's research. Emily had been living a completely double life, maintaining her suburban mom facade while operating in a world of wealthy perverts, blackmail, and criminal connections. The wellness consulting had been a cover story so thin, it was amazing I'd believed it for so long. But then again, I'd wanted to believe it. I'd wanted to trust my wife, to assume her late nights and secretive behavior had innocent explanations. I'd been willfully blind because the alternative was too terrible to consider. "There's something else," Tony said, pulling out another set of photos. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Carmichael, has been very observant. She's got a clear view of your driveway from her kitchen window." The photos showed Emily's car, parked in various locations around the neighborhood, always 2 or 3 blocks from our house, at all hours of the day and night. In several shots, she was meeting with different people, Carter, Jake, and others I didn't recognize. "She was conducting business right under my nose," I said, feeling like the world's biggest fool. "It gets worse. Check this out." Tony showed me bank records he'd obtained through his contacts. Emily had been moving money through multiple accounts, receiving payments from various sources, and making cash withdrawals that totaled nearly $50,000 over the past 6 months. Where was this money coming from? That's the million-dollar question. But based on the timing and amounts, I'd guess it was payment for services rendered, or blackmail money from the people she was collecting evidence on. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your wife has something that belongs to us. We want it back. 24 hours. I showed Tony the message, his expression darkened. "They're not going to just go away, Will. Whatever Emily was involved in, you're now part of it, whether you want to be or not. Then I need to get ahead of this before it gets worse." That afternoon, I drove to the psychiatric facility where Emily was being held for evaluation. She looked smaller somehow, sitting in the sterile visiting room wearing hospital scrubs instead of her usual designer clothes. But her eyes still held that calculating look I'd learned to recognize. "Will, thank God you're here. This is all a misunderstanding. I can explain everything." "Really? Then start explaining why you were performing rituals in our son's bedroom while we slept." Emily's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and desperate underneath. "It's not what it looks like. I was documenting activities for law enforcement, building a case against some very dangerous people." "Cut the BS, Emily. I know about Carter, the money, the blackmail files. I know you've been living a double life for months." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. These people will eliminate to protect their secrets. If you expose them, you'll put Max in danger. Max is already in danger because of what you did. And now Carter and his friend Jake are threatening me for whatever insurance files you've been keeping." Emily's face went pale. "Carter came to the house? Yesterday, looking for your files and equipment. What does he think you have?" "Everything," she whispered. "Photos, videos, financial records, enough to destroy half the power structure in Dallas if it ever went public." "Then maybe it should go public." "Will, no. You don't know these people. They've eliminated before to keep their secrets safe." I stared at my wife, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 9 years, who'd given birth to my son, who'd been living a life so secret and dangerous that even now she was more afraid of her criminal associates than the legal system. "What were you planning to do with all that evidence, Emily?" "Survive," she said simply. "Do you have any idea how much money these people have? How much power? I was building leverage to protect myself and our family. By putting our son at risk, by turning our home into your base of operations for blackmail and extortion. I never meant for Max to get involved. The rituals were just theater, Will. Staged performances to make the clients think they were getting something mystical and forbidden. It was all fake. The animal cruelty was real enough." Emily looked away. "Sometimes the clients required authenticity to maintain the illusion." I felt sick. This woman, the mother of my child, had been torturing animals to maintain her cover story while running a blackmail operation out of our family home. "I want a divorce, Emily, and I'm filing for full custody of Max. Will, please, we can work this out. I'll give you everything, all the money, all the evidence. We can disappear, start over somewhere safe. The only place Max will be safe is as far away from you and your business partners as possible." I stood to leave, but Emily grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "They'll come for you, Will. Carter doesn't leave loose ends. If you don't give him what he wants, he'll hurt you and Max to get to me. Then I guess I'd better make sure he has bigger problems to worry about. That evening, I met with a divorce attorney recommended by Tony. Margaret Chen was a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in high-conflict custody cases involving criminal activity. Based on what you've told me and the evidence you've provided, we can file for emergency custody and a restraining order, she said. The ritual videos alone will be enough to convince any judge that your son isn't safe in his mother's care. What about the blackmail files? Can we use those? Carefully. If your wife was collecting evidence of criminal activity, that could work in our favor. But if she was using it for extortion, that makes her a criminal too. We need to be strategic about how we present this information. And Carter Wells, the threats, document everything. Record any conversations if possible. If they escalate to actual violence, we'll have grounds for protective orders and criminal charges. I drove home feeling like I was finally taking control of the situation instead of just reacting to it. Emily's psychiatric hold would end in 2 days, but by then I'd have legal protections in place and a clear strategy for protecting Max. What I didn't expect was to find my house ransacked when I arrived. Someone had torn through every room looking for something specific. Drawers pulled out, furniture moved, even Max's toy boxes emptied onto the floor. But they'd been careful not to break anything valuable or obvious. This wasn't random vandalism. This was a professional search. I called the police first, then Tony. Detective Riley arrived within 20 minutes, along with the crime scene team. Any idea what they were looking for? She asked. Emily's insurance files. Evidence she was collecting on her business associates. Did they find it? I smiled grimly. No, because I moved everything to a safety deposit box this morning. Tony arrived as the police were finishing their report. He walked through the house, noting details that law enforcement might miss. They knew what they were doing, he said. Professional job, probably Carter and Jake. But they made one mistake. He pointed to a small camera I'd installed in the corner of the living room, barely visible, behind a plant. Please tell me that thing was recording. Motion activated, uploads to cloud storage, automatically. We pulled up the footage on my laptop. Clear as day. Jake Morrison and another man I didn't recognize, systematically searching my house. Jake's face was clearly visible in multiple shots, and the other man had distinctive tattoos that would make identification easy. Now we've got them for breaking and entering, Tony said. But this also means they're escalating. Next time might not be just a search. Then I need to escalate too. I spent that night at my mother's house with Max, planning my counterattack. Emily had taught me something valuable through her deception. Information was power, and the right information at the right time could destroy someone's entire world. Carter Wells and his associates were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The next morning, I began my systematic destruction of Carter Wells and everyone connected to Emily's operation. If they wanted to play hardball with my family's safety, I was going to show them what a motivated IT security specialist could do with the right evidence and unlimited time. First stop, Carter's gym in Deep Ellum. I parked across the street and watched the morning routine. Carter's black pickup was in the lot, along with Jake's beat-up Honda and several other vehicles. The gym appeared legitimate from the outside. Professional signage, clean windows, steady stream of customers. But Tony's research had revealed the real business happened after hours, when Carter locked the front doors and opened the back entrance for his special clientele. I waited until Carter emerged around noon, then followed him to a strip mall where he met with 2 men in expensive suits. One I recognized from Emily's blackmail files, a city planning commissioner named David Burke, who'd been instrumental in approving several controversial development projects. Perfect. I parked close enough to get clear photos with my phone's telephoto lens, then followed Burke when the meeting ended. He drove to City Hall, where he spent the afternoon in meetings that were probably perfectly legal, but would look very suspicious when connected to his after-hours activities at Carter's gym. By evening, I had a comprehensive dossier on Burke's daily routine, his family, his public positions on moral issues, and his secret participation in Carter's underground parties. Emily's blackmail files provided the smoking gun, video evidence of Burke engaged in activities that would end his political career and probably his marriage. Time to make some phone calls. Mr. Burke, this is Will Granger. I think we need to talk about your business relationship with Carter Wells. I'm sorry, who is this? Emily Granger's husband. I believe you know my wife from Carter's private events. Long silence. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because I have some very interesting videos that suggest otherwise. Would you like me to describe them, or would you prefer to meet in person? What do you want? 20 minutes of your time, tonight. The coffee shop on Main Street in Deep Ellum. Come alone. Burke was already there when I arrived, looking like a man attending his own execution. Mid-50s, graying hair, the soft build of someone who'd spent more time behind a desk than in a gym. He'd probably seemed powerful and important at Carter's parties, but now he just looked like a scared, middle-aged man who'd made some very bad choices. You're making a mistake, he said as I sat down. Carter Wells isn't someone you want to cross. Carter Wells broke into my house yesterday? He's threatening my family. That makes him my problem, not the other way around. I slid a manila envelope across the table. Take a look. Burke opened it with shaking hands. Inside were still frames from Emily's videos, showing him clearly engaged in activities that would destroy his reputation and career. His face went white. What do you want? I want Carter to leave me and my son alone. I want him to stop threatening my family and stay away from my property. And I want him to understand that I have enough evidence to destroy everyone in his little social club if he doesn't back off. You don't understand. Carter has connections. People who will hurt you if you expose this. Then you'd better convince him that leaving me alone is in everyone's best interest. I leaned forward, keeping my voice calm and reasonable. Mr. Burke, I don't want to ruin your life. I don't care what you do in your spare time as long as it doesn't involve my family. But if Carter or his friends come near me or my son again, every news outlet in Dallas will receive copies of these videos along with detailed documentation of the money trail connecting you to his operation. Burke stared at the photos, probably calculating how much his divorce would cost and whether his political career could survive the scandal. I'll talk to him. You'll do more than talk. You'll make him understand that I'm not my wife. I'm not interested in blackmail or ongoing leverage. I just want to be left alone to raise my son. But if that's not possible, then I'll burn down everyone connected to this mess. I stood to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Mr. Burke, if anything happens to me or my family, these files automatically get released to the media. I've set up a dead man's switch that even Carter's criminal friends can't stop. That was a bluff. I hadn't actually set up any automatic release system, but Burke didn't know that. The next morning, I received a call from Carter Wells. We need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at my gym in an hour. I'll meet you in the parking lot, in broad daylight. And I'm bringing a friend. Tony was waiting in his car when I arrived at Carter's gym. We'd agreed that he'd stay back unless things went bad, but his presence would make it clear that I wasn't operating alone. Carter emerged from the gym looking like he'd slept badly. His usual confident swagger was replaced by the careful movements of someone who'd realized he was in deeper trouble than expected. Burke says you've got videos. I've got a lot more than videos. Financial records, client lists, documentation of activities that would interest both the police and the IRS. Carter's jaw tightened. What's it going to cost me? Nothing. I don't want your money, Carter. I want you to disappear from my life. That's it? That's it. Stop threatening me, stay away from my house, leave my family alone, and pretend you never heard the name Granger. And the videos? Stay buried as long as you keep your end of the bargain. Carter studied my face, probably trying to determine if I was bluffing. What about Emily? She's got copies of everything. Emily's going to be very busy with her legal problems. I doubt she'll have time to worry about her old business associates. You sure about that? Emily's not the type to go down quietly. Emily's not your problem anymore. I am, and unlike my wife, I'm not interested in long-term business relationships with people like you. Carter nodded slowly. All right, but if those videos ever surface, they won't, unless you give me a reason to change my mind. I walked back to my car, feeling like I'd just defused a bomb, but I knew this was only the beginning. Emily would be released from psychiatric hold tomorrow, and she'd be desperate to regain control of her situation. That afternoon, I filed for emergency custody and a restraining order. Margaret Chen had prepared a comprehensive case documenting Emily's criminal activities, mental health issues, and the danger she posed to Max. The hearing was scheduled for the next day. That evening, I sat in my mother's living room watching Max play with his Legos, trying to give him some sense of normalcy while his world fell apart around him. He was resilient, but I could see the stress in the way he obsessively organized his toys and asked careful questions about when we'd go home. Dad, are you and Mom getting divorced? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Yeah, buddy, we are. Because she's sick? Because she made some very bad choices that hurt our family. Max nodded solemnly, then went back to building his space station. But I noticed he was constructing walls around the main structure, like he was trying to protect the astronauts inside from outside threats. Smart kid. He understood more than he was saying. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Talk to Carter. Smart move, but Emily won't be as reasonable. Watch your back. I showed the message to Tony when he arrived for dinner. Probably Burke, he said. Sounds like your conversation made an impression. What about Emily? Any word on her release? Tomorrow morning, but Will, there's something else. I've been monitoring chatter through my old police contacts. Emily's not just facing charges related to the animal cruelty videos. What else? The FBI is looking into the financial side of Carter's operation. Money laundering, tax evasion, possible connections to organized crime. Your wife's blackmail files might be evidence in a federal investigation. That's good, right? More pressure on Carter to leave us alone? Maybe, or it might make them desperate enough to do something stupid. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me check the windows. Every car passing by made me wonder if Carter had decided that leaving me alone was too risky. But the real threat was coming from a direction I hadn't expected. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. Detective Riley. Mr. Granger, your wife was released an hour ago. She's violated the terms of her psychiatric hold by leaving the facility grounds without permission. We have a warrant out for her arrest, but I wanted you to know she might try to contact you. Any idea where she went? Her car was found abandoned at a DART station. She could be anywhere by now. I looked out the window at the quiet suburban street where my mother lived. Somewhere out there, Emily was free and desperate, with nothing left to lose and a lifetime of secrets to protect. The custody hearing was in 6 hours. If Emily didn't show up, I'd get temporary custody by default. But knowing Emily, she wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. Emily made her move during the custody hearing. I was sitting in family court with Margaret Chen, presenting evidence of Emily's criminal activities and unfitness as a parent, when the bailiff received an urgent message. Judge Patricia Williams, a stern woman in her 60s, who'd seen every kind of family dysfunction imaginable, called for a brief recess. Mr. Granger, there's been an incident at your son's school. The police are requesting your immediate presence. My blood turned to ice. What kind of incident? A woman matching your wife's description was seen on the school grounds attempting to approach your son during recess. I was out of my seat and running before the judge finished speaking. Max's school was in lockdown when I arrived. Police cars filled the parking lot, and Detective Riley met me at the front entrance. Max is safe, she said immediately, but your wife attempted to take him from the playground during lunch break. The teachers intervened, and she fled on foot. Where is he now? Principal Watson's office. He's shaken up but unharmed. I found Max sitting in a chair that seemed too big for his small frame, clutching his dinosaur backpack and looking lost. When he saw me, he launched himself into my arms. Dad, Mom tried to take me to her car, but Mrs. Peterson wouldn't let her. She was crying and saying we had to leave right now. I held him tight, feeling his small body trembling against my chest. You're safe now, buddy. I'm here. Principal Watson looked exhausted. Well, I'm so sorry. We had Emily listed as unauthorized for pickup, but she climbed the fence during recess and approached Max directly. If Mrs. Peterson hadn't intervened, thank you, all of you, for protecting him. Detective Riley pulled me aside. We've issued an Amber Alert and put out a bolo for Emily's vehicle. But, Mr. Granger, this escalation suggests she's becoming increasingly unstable. We need to consider that she might try again. What are my options? Full police protection is difficult to justify long-term, but we can increase patrols around your mother's house and the school. I'd also recommend staying somewhere Emily wouldn't think to look. That afternoon, Tony helped me move Max and my mother to a safe house. Actually a vacation rental in a small town outside Dallas that Tony used for witness protection cases. It wasn't luxurious, but it was secure and off the grid. While Max napped, exhausted by the day's trauma, I sat on the porch with Tony planning our next move. Emily's desperate now, he said. She's lost everything, her freedom, her son, her blackmail operation. People in that state become unpredictable. What about Carter? Think he's helping her? Doubtful. Emily on the run draws attention to his operation. He's probably hoping she gets caught before she can implicate him in anything else. My phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello, Will. Emily's voice sounded hollow, distant. Emily, where are you? You need to turn yourself in before this gets worse. I need to see Max, just for a few minutes, to explain what's happening. That's not going to happen. You scared him today. He doesn't understand why his mother's acting like a stranger. Because I'm trying to protect him. Carter's people are looking for me. If they find me, they'll hurt Max to get what they want. What do they want, Emily? The insurance files, the evidence I collected. They know I kept copies of everything, and they're terrified it will surface during my trial. Then give them what they want. I can't. Because the moment I hand over those files, I become a liability. They'll eliminate me, Will. And then they'll come after you and Max to make sure there are no loose ends. I felt a chill run down my spine. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to disappear. All of us. Take Max and run before Carter realizes that you've seen the evidence too. I'm not running, Emily. And I'm not letting you anywhere near Max. Will, please. You don't understand what these people are capable of. I understand that my son is safer without you in his life. The line went quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry it came to this, Emily said finally. But I won't let them hurt Max. She hung up, leaving me staring at the phone and wondering what she meant by that. I found out 3 hours later, Detective Riley called with an update that made my stomach drop. Emily turned herself into the FBI field office in downtown Dallas. But Will, she didn't just surrender. She brought evidence. Boxes of it. What kind of evidence? Everything. Financial records, client lists, videos, photographs. She's claiming she was working as an informant, gathering evidence against Carter's organization for law enforcement. That's BS. She was blackmailing those people. Maybe, but she's also provided information that connects Carter's operation to a larger criminal network. Money laundering, human trafficking, political corruption. If even half of what she's claiming is true, this case just became a federal investigation. What does that mean for Max and me? Witness protection, possibly. Emily's testimony could bring down some very powerful and dangerous people. They'll want revenge against anyone connected to her. I sat on the porch of the safe house, watching the sun set over unfamiliar hills, trying to process what Emily had done. In one desperate move, she'd transformed herself from criminal to informant, potentially saving her own life while putting Max and me in even greater danger. My phone buzzed with a text from Carter. Your wife just made a very big mistake. Hope it was worth it. That night, I lay awake listening to every sound outside the safe house, wondering if Emily's final gambit had saved us or doomed us all. Max slept fitfully in the next room, calling out for his mother in his dreams despite everything she'd done. By morning, the story had broken on every news channel in Dallas. Local woman provides evidence in federal corruption investigation. Emily's face was plastered across the screen along with photos of Carter, several prominent businessmen, and 2 city council members being led away in handcuffs. The reporter's voice was breathless with excitement. Sources close to the investigation say that Emily Granger, initially arrested for animal cruelty and child endangerment, has provided evidence of a wide-ranging criminal conspiracy involving money laundering, blackmail, and political corruption. Federal agents raided multiple locations overnight, including a gym in Deep Ellum and several private residences. I watched Carter being perp-walked in handcuffs, his confident swagger replaced by the hunched posture of a man whose world had just collapsed. Jake Morrison was arrested at his apartment, along with 2 other men I recognized from Emily's surveillance photos. But the biggest shock came when they showed footage of David Burke, the city planning commissioner I'd confronted just days earlier, being arrested at his home while his wife and children watched from the doorway. Emily had burned it all down. Detective Riley called an hour later. It's over, Will. Carter and his entire operation are in federal custody. The immediate threat to you and Max is gone. What about Emily? She's cooperating fully with the investigation. In exchange for her testimony, she'll probably avoid serious prison time. But she'll be in witness protection for the foreseeable future. And Max? You'll get full custody. No judge in the country would return a child to someone in witness protection who's testifying against organized crime figures. I should have felt relieved. The threat was over, Max was safe, and Emily would be out of our lives permanently. but all I felt was exhausted. The woman I'd married, the mother of my son, had been living a lie so complete that even her final act of apparent redemption was probably just another manipulation. That afternoon, I received a call from Margaret Chen. The custody hearing had been rescheduled, but it was now a formality. Emily had signed papers relinquishing all parental rights in exchange for her cooperation agreement with the FBI. She's also agreed to a no-contact order, Margaret said. She won't be able to reach out to you or Max without violating her witness protection agreement. So it's really over. The legal part, yes. But Will, you and Max are going to need counseling to process everything that's happened. This kind of trauma doesn't just disappear because the paperwork is signed. That evening, I sat Max down for the hardest conversation of my life. Mom won't be coming home, I told him. She's going to live somewhere far away where she can be safe and get the help she needs. Will I ever see her again? I don't know, buddy. Maybe someday when you're older. But for now, it's just going to be you and me. Max nodded solemnly, then asked the question that broke my heart. Did I do something wrong, Dad? Is that why Mom had to go away? No, Max. You didn't do anything wrong. Mom made some bad choices, and now she has to face the consequences. But none of this is your fault. Will you go away too? I pulled him into my lap, holding him tight. Never. I will never leave you, Max. I promise. But even as I made that promise, I wondered what other secrets might be lurking in our family's past. What other lies Emily had told. What other dangers might still be waiting to surface. The next morning, we returned to our house for the first time in a week. Everything looked the same, but it felt different. Smaller somehow. Like a stage set for a play that had ended badly. I was helping Max unpack his clothes when he stopped and looked at me with those serious green eyes. Dad, are we going to be okay? I thought about everything we'd been through, everything we'd lost, and everything we'd survived. Yeah, buddy, we're going to be just fine. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it. 3 weeks later, just when I thought our nightmare was finally over, Emily made one last desperate play that nearly destroyed everything. I was working late in my home office, catching up on projects I'd neglected during the custody battle, when my security system alerted me to movement in the backyard. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., well past the time any legitimate visitor would come calling. Through the camera feed, I watched 3 figures moving toward the house with the practiced stealth of people who'd done this before. One was tall and broad-shouldered like Carter, but Carter was in federal custody. The second figure was smaller, more agile. The third moved with a familiar grace that made my blood run cold. Emily. I grabbed my phone and crept upstairs to check on Max. He was sleeping soundly, clutching the stuffed dinosaur he'd had since he was 3. Whatever Emily was planning, I wouldn't let it touch him. The security cameras tracked the intruders as they approached the back door. The tall figure produced lock-picking tools, while Emily and the third person, a woman I didn't recognize, kept watch. They moved with the confidence of people who'd done extensive surveillance, who knew my routines and had planned this carefully. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They assumed I was the same naive husband who'd been blindsided by his wife's secret life 3 months ago. They didn't know I'd spent weeks learning from Tony Martinez, upgrading my security systems, and preparing for exactly this scenario. I activated the silent alarm that would alert both the police and Tony, then settled in to watch Emily's final performance. The lockpicking took less than 2 minutes. Professional work. The tall figure, I could now see it was Jake Morrison, somehow out on bail, led them through my kitchen while Emily provided whispered directions. The woman stayed by the door as a lookout. They were searching for something specific, moving through my house with purpose rather than randomly destroying things. Emily directed them to my office, then to the master bedroom, then to the basement storage area. Through the security feed, I heard Emily's frustrated voice. It has to be here. Will's too paranoid to keep it anywhere else. Maybe he already turned it over to the feds, Jake suggested. No, he would have used it as leverage if he'd wanted to cooperate. Will's not the type to just hand over his advantages. She was right about that, but she was wrong about what I'd do with those advantages. I waited until they'd finished searching the main floor and headed toward the stairs where Max was sleeping. That's when I activated the second phase of my security system. Every door in the house locked simultaneously, electronic deadbolts I'd installed after Carter's first break-in. The windows were already secured with reinforced locks and security film. My house had become a trap, and Emily had walked right into it. "What the hell?" Jake's voice carried clearly through the security speakers. Emily tried the front door, then the back door, then the sliding glass door to the patio, all sealed tight. "Will," she called out, no longer trying to be stealthy. "I know you're here. We need to talk." I activated the intercom system, my voice echoing through the house from hidden speakers. "Hello, Emily, Jake, and whoever your friend is. Welcome to my home security demonstration." "Will, this isn't a game," Emily said, looking directly at one of the cameras. "There are people who wanted to hurt you and Max. I'm trying to protect you. By breaking into my house with a convicted felon? Interesting protection strategy." Jake was testing the doors and windows systematically, looking for weaknesses. The unknown woman had pulled out her phone, probably trying to call for backup. "Cell service won't work," I announced. "Signal jammer. Another recent upgrade." "Will, listen to me," Emily said, her voice taking on that manipulative tone I'd learned to recognize. "The FBI deal is falling apart. Carter's lawyers are claiming I fabricated evidence. If my testimony gets thrown out, he'll be back on the street in weeks. That sounds like your problem, not mine. It becomes your problem when he decides you know too much, when he realizes you have copies of the insurance files." "What insurance files?" Emily smiled at the camera with that cold calculation I remembered from our marriage. "The ones you downloaded from my iPad before you turned it over to the police. The ones you've been using to blackmail Burke and the others." Jake stopped testing the windows and stared at Emily. "You said he had physical copies." I lied. "Will's smarter than that. He digitized everything and stored it in the cloud. Probably multiple backups with dead man switches and automatic releases." She was giving me far more credit than I deserved. I'd made copies of the files, but I hadn't set up any elaborate distribution system. Still, her assumptions were working in my favor. "Here's what's going to happen," Emily continued, addressing the camera directly. "You're going to give me access to those files so I can destroy them. All of them. Every copy, every backup, every piece of evidence that connects any of us to Carter's operation. And why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll tell Carter's people exactly where to find you and Max. I'll give them your mother's address, Max's school, your office building. I'll make sure they know that you're the one who really brought down their operation." The threat hit me like a physical blow. Even from witness protection, Emily could reach out to Carter's remaining associates, could point them toward my family as revenge for her cooperation with the FBI. But she'd made another crucial mistake. She'd assumed I was still the same person who'd been manipulated and controlled throughout our marriage. She didn't understand that losing everything had taught me something valuable. When you have nothing left to lose, you become very dangerous. "Counteroffer," I said through the intercom. "You and your friends surrender to the police when they arrive in about 6 minutes. You return to witness protection and never contact me or Max again. And I don't release the video of this conversation to the FBI showing you threatening a federal witness." "What video?" I switched the main floor monitors to show the security feed. Emily, Jake, and their accomplice stared at themselves on screen, their faces clearly visible, their voices clearly recorded. "The video where you admit to lying to federal investigators about evidence, where you threaten to expose a witness's location to criminal associates, where you break into a federal witness's home with a convicted felon." Emily's face went white. "You fool!" I learned from the best. Jake was getting agitated, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "This is BS. We came here to get files, not get recorded making confessions." "Jake," Emily said sharply, "shut up." "No, I'm done shutting up. You said this would be simple. Get in, get the files, get out. You didn't say anything about the house being Fort Knox or us getting trapped like rats." The woman by the door spoke for the first time. "Police sirens, 2 blocks away." Emily closed her eyes, probably calculating her rapidly diminishing options. She could surrender and face federal charges for threatening a witness. She could try to fight her way out and face additional charges for attack and attempted escape. Or she could try to negotiate. "Will, we can still work this out. I know you don't want Max to grow up knowing his mother died in prison. I don't want Max to grow up knowing his mother at all." The sirens were getting closer. Jake was testing the doors again, more frantically now. "There's a fourth option," Emily said quietly. "You let us go. Delete the security footage. Pretend this never happened, and I disappear forever. No more threats, no more contact, no more problems. And in exchange, I give you something you want more than revenge. I give you the truth about Max." My blood froze. What about Max? Emily smiled, and for the first time in months, it looked genuine. "He's not your son, Will. Never was. Carter is Max's biological father. I've been lying to you for 8 years." The words hit me like a physical blow. Max, my brilliant, sensitive, loving son, not mine. The boy I'd fought for, protected, promised to never abandon. Not my blood. But then, I thought about bedtime stories and science projects and the way Max's face lit up when I came home from work. I thought about his small hand in mine and his serious questions about the world and his absolute trust that I would keep him safe. "You're lying," I said. "DNA test results are in my purse." Carter demanded proof before he'd pay child support. Max is his son, not yours. Jake had stopped pacing and was staring at Emily in shock. Even the unknown woman looked surprised by this revelation. "You see, Will, everything you've been fighting for is based on a lie. Max isn't your family. He's Carter's family, and when Carter gets out of prison, he'll want his son back." The police sirens were on my street now. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. I thought about Max sleeping upstairs, innocent and trusting, unaware that the adults in his life had been playing games with his identity since before he was born. I thought about Emily's final manipulation, her attempt to use my love for Max as a weapon against me. And I realized something that Emily, in all her calculating intelligence, had never understood. "Emily," I said through the intercom, "it doesn't matter." "What?" "It doesn't matter if Max is biologically mine or not. I'm his father. I'm the one who taught him to ride a bike and helped with homework and held him when he had nightmares. I'm the one who's been there every day of his life while his biological father was running criminal enterprises." The police were at my front door now. I could hear Detective Riley's voice through the speakers. "Dallas PD, open up." "And you know what else, Emily? Even if what you're saying is true, it just makes me more determined to protect Max from people like you and Carter. Because that little boy deserves a father who puts his safety above everything else." I deactivated the door locks and watched through the security feed as police officers flooded into my house. Emily, Jake, and their accomplice were on the ground in handcuffs within 30 seconds. Detective Riley found me in my office, monitoring the arrest through the security cameras. "Interesting home security system," she said. "Recent upgrade. I wanted to be prepared for uninvited guests. Your wife's claiming she was trying to protect you from threats. Says she has evidence that Carter's associates are planning to hurt you and your son." "My wife has a complicated relationship with the truth. What about her claim that Max isn't your biological son?" I looked at the security monitor, showing Emily being led to a police car, her face a mask of rage and defeat. "Detective, I've been Max's father for 7 years. Biology doesn't change that. And if Carter tries to claim parental rights when he gets out of prison, then he'll discover that being a seed donor doesn't make you a parent. Being there every day, that's what makes you a parent." After the police left, I went upstairs to check on Max. He was still sleeping peacefully, undisturbed by the drama that had played out below. I sat in the chair beside his bed, watching him breathe, thinking about Emily's final revelation. Maybe it was true. Maybe Carter was Max's biological father. Maybe I'd been raising another man's child for 7 years without knowing it. But as I watched Max sleep, clutching his stuffed dinosaur and murmuring softly in his dreams, I realized that Emily had made one last miscalculation. She'd thought that learning the truth about Max's paternity would destroy my love for him, would make me want to walk away from the responsibility of raising him. Instead, it made me love him more. Because Max wasn't just a child who'd been born into this family. He was a child who'd been chosen. Every day for 7 years, I'd chosen to be his father. And I'd keep choosing, regardless of what any DNA test might say. The next morning, I made breakfast while Max built Lego spaceships at the kitchen table. Normal routine, normal conversation, normal life slowly reasserting itself after months of chaos. "Dad?" Max looked up from his construction project. "Mrs. Peterson at school said Mom got arrested again." "Yeah, buddy, she did. Is she ever coming back?" I thought about Emily's final desperate gambit, her willingness to break into our home and threaten our safety for one last chance at control. I thought about her revelation about Max's paternity, delivered as a weapon designed to destroy our family. "No, Max, she's never coming back." Good, he said simply, then went back to his Legos. That afternoon, Detective Riley called with an update. Emily had been charged with witness intimidation, breaking and entering and violating the terms of her cooperation agreement. Her deal with the FBI was void, and she'd likely spend the next decade in federal prison. Jake Morrison was back in custody on multiple charges. The unknown woman turned out to be Emily's sister from Oregon, who'd been drawn into the scheme with promises of easy money. What about Carter? I asked. Still in federal custody. His lawyers are claiming Emily's evidence was fabricated. But even without her testimony, we've got enough financial records and witness statements to keep him locked up for years. And his claim to Max? Complicated. If he is the biological father, he could theoretically file for parental rights. But given his criminal record and current incarceration, no judge would grant custody to him over you. That evening, I sat Max down for another serious conversation. Max, there's something I need to tell you about your mom and some things that happened before you were born. I explained in age-appropriate terms that Emily had lied about many things, including who Max's biological father was. I watched his face carefully, ready to provide comfort and reassurance. But Max just nodded thoughtfully, then asked, "Does that mean you're not my real dad?" "What do you think?" Max considered this seriously, the way he approached all important questions. "I think real dads are the ones who take care of you and teach you stuff and don't go away. So you're my real dad." "That's right, buddy, and I always will be." "What about Carter? Is he going to want to take me away? Carter's in jail, and he's going to stay there for a very long time. And even if he wasn't, no one could take you away from me. We're family, Max. That's not something that can be changed by paperwork or DNA tests." 6 months later, I received a letter from Emily in federal prison. She'd been sentenced to 8 years for witness intimidation and related charges. Carter had been convicted on multiple federal charges and sentenced to 15 years without parole. The letter was full of apologies and explanations, claims that she'd only been trying to protect Max and me from dangers we didn't understand. She asked for forgiveness, for a chance to rebuild our relationship, for permission to write to Max. I read it once, then fed it through my office shredder. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. Max and I had built a new life together, one based on honesty and trust, rather than secrets and manipulation. He was thriving in school, making friends, slowly healing from the trauma of his mother's betrayal. We had family dinners and homework sessions and weekend adventures, all the normal routines of a normal family. But sometimes, late at night, I'd think about Emily's final revelation and wonder if it was true. Was Max really Carter's son? Had I been raising the child of a criminal without knowing it? Then I'd remember Max's laugh, his curiosity about the world, his absolute trust that I would always be there for him. And I'd realize that it didn't matter. Biology was just genetics. Family was about choice, commitment, and love. I'd chosen Max every day for 7 years, and I'd keep choosing him for the rest of my life. 1 year after Emily's final arrest, I was helping Max with a school project about family trees when he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Dad, if Carter is my biological father, does that mean I'm going to be like him when I grow up?" I knelt down to his eye level, looking into those serious green eyes that reminded me so much of Emily. "Max, you get to choose who you become. It doesn't matter who your biological parents are. What matters is the choices you make every day. What if I make bad choices like Mom did? Then you learn from them and make better choices next time. That's what growing up means." Max nodded solemnly, then went back to drawing our family tree. In his picture, it was just the two of us, standing in front of our house with our dog, a golden retriever we'd adopted from the shelter last month. No Emily, no Carter, no complicated history or criminal associations. Just a father and son who'd chosen each other and built a family based on love rather than lies. Looking at that simple drawing, I realized that Emily had been wrong about one final thing. She'd thought that revealing the truth about Max's paternity would destroy our family. Instead, it had made us stronger, because now I knew with absolute certainty that Max was my son, not because of biology, but because of choice. And that was a bond that no DNA test, no criminal revelation, no desperate manipulation could ever break. 3 years later, I received a call from Detective Riley. Emily had died in federal prison. A heart attack, sudden and unexpected. She was 39 years old. I felt nothing. No grief, no relief, no Satisfaction, just a hollow acknowledgement that a chapter of our lives had finally closed. Max, now 10 years old and thriving, took the news with the same serious consideration he applied to all of life's complexities. Should I be sad? He asked. You should feel whatever you feel, I told him. There's no right or wrong way to react to this. I feel empty, like she was already gone, so this doesn't change anything. That's okay, buddy. That's a perfectly normal way to feel. Will you tell me about her someday? The good things before she got sick? I thought about Emily's laugh, the way she used to dance in the kitchen while cooking dinner, how she'd read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. There had been good times before the secrets and lies consumed everything. Yeah, Max, someday I'll tell you about the good times. But not today. Today was for looking forward, not backward. 5 years after Emily's final arrest, Max was 15 years old, honor roll student, varsity soccer player, and the kind of young man who helped elderly neighbors with their groceries and volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends. If Carter's genetics had contributed anything to Max's character, it wasn't criminal tendencies or moral flexibility. Max had grown into someone honest, compassionate, and strong. Everything Emily and Carter had never been. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Max asked me the question I'd been expecting for years. Dad, do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mom hadn't gotten caught? If she'd never been arrested and we'd just kept living that lie? I considered the question seriously. Would we have been happy living in ignorance? Would Emily's criminal activities have eventually destroyed us anyway? Would Max have grown up thinking that secrets and manipulation were normal parts of family life? I think the truth always comes out eventually, I said. And I think we're better off facing it honestly than living with lies. Even if the truth hurts, especially if the truth hurts. Because once you deal with the pain, you can start healing. But lies just keep festering until they poison everything. Max nodded, then asked the question that surprised me. Do you think she loved me? Really loved me. I thought about Emily's desperate attempts to see Max after her arrest. Her willingness to break into our house and risk everything for one last chance at contact. I thought about her final manipulation, using Max's paternity as a weapon while claiming she was trying to protect him. I think she loved you as much as she was capable of loving anyone, I said finally. But Emily was broken in ways that made it impossible for her to put your needs above her own wants. That's sad. Yeah, it is. But we're okay now, right? Our family is okay? I looked at my son, not my biological son, but my son in every way that mattered, and felt a deep sense of peace. We're more than okay, Max. We're exactly where we're supposed to be. As the sun set over our quiet suburban neighborhood, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. Emily's betrayal had nearly destroyed us, but it had also freed us from a life built on lies. Carter's threats had terrified me, but they'd also shown me how far I was willing to go to protect my family. And Emily's final revelation about Max's paternity, the weapon she'd thought would destroy our bond, had actually strengthened it by proving that love was stronger than biology. Max was my son. Not because of DNA, but because of choice. Because of bedtime stories and soccer games and homework help and 1,000 small moments that had built our relationship day by day. Emily had been wrong about everything that mattered. She'd thought family was about blood and genetics. She'd thought love was about possession and control. She'd thought secrets were about power and protection. But family was about commitment. Love was about sacrifice. And truth, however painful, was about freedom. As we headed inside for dinner, Max asked one final question. Dad, are you glad it all happened? I mean, are you glad we found out the truth? Truth, even though it was awful. I thought about the man I'd been 3 years ago. Naive, trusting, willfully blind to the lies surrounding me. Then I looked at the man I'd become, stronger, wiser, absolutely certain about what mattered most in life. Yeah, Max, I'm glad we found out the truth because now we can live it. And that's exactly what we did.